All right, sweet. I am recording this. Again, my name is Charles Owen with Paladin. Today's presentation is on PaladinNsight. Expose wasted investment dollars with the non-performing assets tool. This is a tool that's very helpful. This isn't anything new, hopefully. You know, the two challenges with having a retail store when you have lots and lots of SKUs is managing, thank you, Tina, is managing the inventory, and that is making sure that there's not too little and making sure there's not too much. Well, this is the part of the presentation or part of the system that we're going to be discussing today that talks about non-performing assets, those items in your inventory that aren't turning. And it's good to know what those items are, and we're going to talk about how Paladin can expose this information to you and make it very easy to see. So let's go look at the agenda. We're going to talk about what non-performing assets are. We're going to look at the tool. We're going to dissect this tool. I'm going to show you how to get in and how to use it, how to look at the different views of the tool, the non-performing assets tool, look at the meter, the viewer, and how to get into more detailed information so you can actually interact with this data in real time. Then we'll go over the inventory overstock details, and we'll look at some of the best practices in using this and making sure that you succeed. So starting with slide 1, what are they? Well, these are those items that aren't turning. I just mentioned that. They're items that you have where basically you can have a lot of dollars tied up in inventory, and those dollars could be going to something different. They can be going towards a new line or new products, or maybe you want to expand your store or buy another store, or maybe even take that vacation to Tahiti. When you've got an inventory of $500,000 to $1 million, and you potentially have up to 25 or 30% of the inventory that isn't turning, we're talking big dollars here. Now, this is, again, we're going to talk about how we, and you can see from this diagram here, somebody's got a magnifying glass and they're looking to investigate. This non-performing asset tool is the investigator. It's going to help you and find out where your dollars are being wasted. The non-performing asset tool will help you identify your wasted inventory dollars, and it's a part of the PaladinNsight. Like I mentioned, if this dial on the screen here does not look familiar to you, then we need to activate PaladinNsight. I believe it's in the company tab, and probably under inventory where it says, you know, expose or show the dashboards. That's the PaladinNsight dashboard. So that's important to have. If you do not have it, make sure you put a case in and we'll go ahead and get it set up for you. It is driven by our market-driven inventory management system, meaning if you use Paladin the way it was designed, where you leverage the suggested ordering and you let the system make some decisions for you on ordering, it's going to, by looking at prior history and all the other algorithms in the system, it's going to calculate and figure out what you need in the way of buying product. And if you don't have that today, where you're still walking around the store, you could potentially be over-ordering and or under-ordering. And that's really a challenge that we're trying to accomplish here at Paladin, because that is the basis of your success in generating a higher GM ROI, in getting more customers in your store, in maintaining and retaining customers, and all of that's really important to your success. So we put these 4 dials, which today we're talking about the last one, the non-performing asset tool, in place so you can see things like your lost opportunities. And we talked about that in a prior webinar on those items that should be selling, but they're not there to sell. So those are lost opportunities. Then you have the investment review, items that need to be reviewed, because if you don't review your inventory, who will? And then your last experience is of course your shrinkage. And now this particular dial, the last one on the right, is non-performing asset tool. Now this is showing you that it does have multiple layers. It isn't just a dial to look at, and yes, it's great if your dial gets down into the yellow and the green arc. That's really nice. Nearly impossible with this dial, but it can get a lot. You can improve tremendously. you know, there's some inherent issues with hardware stores, right? And where you have to buy products that you know aren't going to necessarily turn, but more than a couple times a year. But you have to have them there. For example, drill bits. You know, you might have a whole display of drill bits, but you only have 2 or 3 or 4 that have some depth to it. The other ones, there's maybe 1 or 2 drill bits there just to make up the display. Well, those items may not sell that often, but they have to be there. There's a number of items like that. Lumber and building materials is another huge issue where you have to buy what you buy when you can get a hold of it, right? And you're making a lot of guesses. Those are going to be some, you know, challenges, and you're going to find some non-performing assets sitting there in your inventory that you otherwise don't have any control over. Just the nature of the business. Don't worry about it. But what we're talking about today is being able to interact with this information and at least bring this front and center so you know what's going on. So the meter shows you right on the screen here. You can see the little red arrow on the left-hand side there pointing to the number of dollars. So that 254.69 is multiplied by 1,000. So it basically translates to you have $254,000 of investment dollars that aren't turning, that are not providing a return on investment for you. Your GMROI is sinking on those items, meaning your gross margin return on investment. You're not getting the dollars back that you've invested in the product, let alone a profit, and that's an issue. So this is what the dial shows you. Monitor this meter daily, as it says here for the first tip, to look at your investment performance trends and utilize that to make sure it's going in the right direction, which should be teetering towards the left there, not the right. If the meter's not on the down curve and is on the rise, figure out what it is, and you can use this tool to do this. Notice on the bottom there, there's a non-performing assets with a little magnifying glass. If you press on that magnifying glass, it will bring you into a screen that actually lets you see the information, and you can see it in multiple different slices of data, right? So you can see it, let's look at the next slide here, you can see it by department or location, you can see it by wasted dollars or overstock quantities, and these are interesting numbers. So you can, all you have to do on this particular screen is click on the dials above, the little radio buttons, and determine if you want to view this by location or by department, by overage or by waste. I always like to look at department by waste because I like to see what's what departments are not performing well. And within that, if you click again, notice on the left-hand side of these this sheet, you have a magnifying glass. If you press the magnifying glass, well, first of all, we're doing a close-up here, showing you how you can look at waste. So if you hit the dial button, the radio button, waste, and then you click on the column waste, it'll sort it by either ascending or descending, depending on how many times you press it. So if you press it twice, it'll be in descending, and it'll put the highest amount of waste that you have. And then, if you know that, then you can drill down again and see all those items in that particular department, and you can still interact with this information because we're now just drilling down. We've selected the department, that's the biggest waste. We've now clicked on that department. Now we have all the items that are not turning, and we can sort those as well. So if we go to the top and we select waste, or we select stock on hand or overage, these are things that we can see just by clicking on once or twice on that header of that column, and you can see this information. The bottom right-hand corner, you see you can export this list to Excel. If you wanted to bring in Excel and do further, crunching of numbers or slicing of the data or sorting it, you can do that as well. Now, most of you are probably saying, yeah, but you can't click on it and go to the inventory and change the item. Well, that's because you may or may not have the latest software. We've already started pushing the latest release of Paladin across the United States. It's already covered probably half of the states, and it will cover the rest as we continue to vet it and make sure it's good. It's out there, it's live, it's running. One of the benefits is you're able to now click on an item and that item will take you right to the inventory item. So you can now manage that inventory item. Change stock on hand if it's wrong, go in and figure out what's going on. In this particular view I'm looking at, I have no history, but I have one day that I sold a ton of this stuff, and now I have 13 on hand that probably won't sell for another year if we're lucky. So these are just items that, or this is a method in which you can get in and look at the details and be able to interact with these details very easily. Now when you're done, you just hit escape, and it goes right back to the spreadsheet view of the actual dashboard. All right, so what are some of the best practices here? So we're talking about, first one is buying strategies that help you succeed. So one of the things that we always push is, buy what you can and buy what you can sell and no more. And it's very tempting to say, oh, geez, if I buy a pallet of this stuff, I'll get it for a dime cheaper or a buck cheaper. I'll save a few bucks here and there. Doesn't do a whole lot for your gross margin return on investment, and doesn't do a whole lot for managing your inventory. If you have that kind of mentality, that's fine. If you have all the money in the world and you're not afraid of overstocking your store and making sure there's tons of product out there that's even in excess of what the demand is going to call for, totally fine. It's not advisable, but it's absolutely your prerogative. However, if you want to be more frugal and you want to compete and you want to increase your GMROI and get your buy other lines of information, because with that money saved, you can use it in other ways, right? So you can use it to invest in products that actually are turning. You can use it to invest in new lines. Like you have that lake in town that you never want to compete with that because there are a couple of sports stores down the street. But hey, if they didn't have to go there and they can just buy it in your store, why not sell it? So it's important to know that you can use that money to invest in other areas that's going to give you a return on investment. All right? So it's what we preach is, you're in the business of selling, not buying, right? Now, obviously, you have to buy, you have to stock your shelves, but it's important to know the fine balance, and that is a balance. You want to make sure you have enough for that customer coming in and that demand, but you don't want to have too much where you're spending a lot of money on inventory that is just sitting dead on your shelf. So what's the second strategy that helps you succeed here? Strive for breadth instead of depth. That's a good one too, breadth instead of depth, yeah. Breadth of product instead of depth of product. The cool thing about Paladin, if you're using suggested ordering, that's the only number that you have to be concerned with when you're doing your orders. How much depth do I want on my shelves? Do I want 3 days worth, 7 days worth, 14 days worth on my shelf? And the tighter that is, the higher your gross margin return on investment is going to be, because you have less money invested and you're getting more of a return for those dollars. But in attracting more customers, if you can expand the breadth of products and you can offer things that, sure, they can get down the street or if they go across town, but why not have it in your store if you've got the space and you've got the clientele? And it's going to also help you acquire new customers if they come into your store to buy something that you don't typically have there, and then they walk around the store and find other things that they didn't know you had. That's a good thing. You're going to get, if you can squeeze another dollar out of every customer, that can be the difference between success and failure. So when you invest in a larger selection of items, I'm reading the last bullet here, rather than larger number of each items, you offer customers more options and will make you more money. That's the bottom line. What's the third best practice tip, buying strategy that'll help you succeed? Take advantage of our technology, right? Take the guesswork out of it. Sure, there's probably nobody in the world that knows your inventory as well as you do, but at what cost? For one. Two, not everybody can have a crystal ball on every single item. And when you use Paladin to crunch these numbers and to do the algorithms to figure out what the demand is going to be, you're actually going to be able to bring in the amount of stock that's going to fulfill the demand but not be too much to where you're overstocking. use the suggested order report. I would like to, if everybody's still watching and paying attention here, I would love it if you could give me kind of a raise of hand for those that are using the suggested ordering. I see a few hands going up. All right. So we got a few. We've got a few more popping up here. Now you can also use it in conjunction with other methods, right? So you might use suggested ordering for your main supplier, but then you might take the gun and scan for other products, scan for outs and things on other areas. That's okay. But if you want to use the majority of your ordering through suggested ordering, because that's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck with Paladin. It's the technology that's going to help you drive to achieve optimal stocking levels. And that, at the end of the day, is what it's all about. So I would encourage and implore you who are out there that aren't using suggested ordering, it's not a scary thing. It really isn't. Sure, the first time you run it, what's going to happen? It's probably going to say you need, $100,000 worth of product. Okay, that's normal. We got to, straighten this out, and that's okay. If you go in with that expectation, after a few weeks of doing some test runs and trials and fixing the items that it shouldn't be reordering, and fixing the items that are maybe dead or that are special orders, that's okay. Once you get to a point where you're comfortable with producing the suggested order, and then now you're kind of using that in conjunction with walking your store, and you see that, hey, there's not a whole lot of separation here, and I'm spending 8 hours doing this. Why don't I just have the system do it in an hour or less? I mean, you can produce a report within seconds, but then your job as the procurement agent for your store is to make sure that those quantities are right. And you can just look over that information. If something's wrong, you can change it or change it on a PO before you send your order. But the goal is to get down to that hour and to use the technology in order to figure out, make sure you don't have too little or too much of an item. All right. Is there another slide here? There is. So to learn more, we've got the PaladinNsight webinar, which we have right here. So we can rewatch that. Boost your business with PaladinNsight. It's another KB article that we have, and there's a number of other PaladinNsight or dashboard webinars that you can see. If you just go to portal.paladinpos.com/webinars, as it states in the bottom of the slide here, and search for webinars or anything for that matter that has PaladinNsight in it, spell it with the 2 N's, just like it shows here, and it will come up and display to you all the different areas where you can learn more about this. All right. I am going to open this up. If anybody has any questions, it would be fine if you wanted to put them in the system right now and send me a question. I'd be more than happy to answer that. If you wish to raise your hand and actually speak to me, I would be more than happy to oblige. I don't see any hands popping up. I don't see any questions. It's pretty straightforward. There's nothing that's really unique about this. Okay, this is something you do every day of your life when you're a store owner, subconsciously and consciously. You make sure you're not wasting money, and that's precisely what you want to do. You want to be able to pull that money out of there. If you use Paladin today and you're not using suggested ordering, I would venture to guess that you can save minimum 15 to 20% of those dollars. You can bring those dollars back out within the first 12 or 13 months of using suggested ordering. It's pretty standard with a lot of our stores telling us those are about the numbers that they're getting, some more, some less. But it can't hurt. It definitely can't hurt. Well, since there's no questions, it has been a pleasure speaking with you today. I will see you again if you want to show up on August 1st. We're doing another webinar series, which I have the privilege of performing. It's going to be about reference margins. And there's a lot of hidden things with those reference margins. It does multiple functions. And if you're not using reference margins to the maximum, it would be great to see you on August 1st for this webinar. If you miss it because you're out of town or what have you, just dial into the system and search for it later on. I appreciate your guys' time. Have a great week, rest of the week. Good luck to everybody, and we'll see you next time.